Lisa walked through the back door of Tony's diner at exactly 5:30 in the morning, just like she had done every day for the past 3 years. The old building creaked as she turned on the lights, and the familiar smell of coffee and bacon grease filled the air. She tied her apron around her waist and looked at herself in the cracked mirror by the employee lockers. Dark circles under her eyes told the story of another sleepless night, but she forced a smile anyway. At 28 years old, Lisa had learned that smiling was part of the job, even when everything in her life felt like it was falling apart. She had 2 kids at home, 8-year-old Tommy and 6-year-old Amy. Tommy needed special help with his reading, and Amy had breathing problems that meant expensive doctor visits every month. Being a single mom wasn't something she had planned, but life had thrown her this challenge and she was determined to handle it. The diner sat on the corner of Main Street in a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. It wasn't fancy. The red vinyl seats had tape holding them together. The floor tiles were chipped and the ceiling fan wobbled when it spun. But it was home to Lisa, and more importantly, it was her only source of income. Lisa earned $2.13 an hour, plus whatever tips customers left behind. On a good day, she might go home with $60. On a bad day, it was closer to $30. Every penny mattered when you had rent due, electric bills piling up, and 2 growing children who needed food, clothes, and school supplies. The owner, Tony Romano, was a good man in his 70s who had run the diner for over 40 years. His hands shook a little now and he moved slower than he used to, but he still came in every morning to help with the breakfast rush. Tony understood what it meant to work hard for your money. He had raised 5 kids of his own in the apartment, above the diner, back when times were different. But Tony was getting older and the diner was showing its age too. The new chain restaurants that had opened down the street were taking away customers. People seemed to prefer the bright lights and fast service of those places over the home-style cooking and personal touch that Tony's diner offered. Some days, Lisa would stand behind the counter and count only a handful of customers during what should have been the busy lunch hour. Despite all the struggles, Lisa never let her problems show to the customers. She learned everyone's names, remembered how they liked their coffee, and always had a kind word to share. Mrs. Peterson came in every Tuesday for her apple pie and coffee, and Lisa would sit with her for a few minutes to hear stories about her grandchildren. Mr. Williams always ordered the same breakfast, 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast, and orange juice, and Lisa would have it ready before he even asked. The other workers at the diner had become like family to Lisa. There was Maria, the cook who had been there almost as long as Tony. Maria spoke with a thick accent and made the best pancakes in town. She often slipped extra food onto Lisa's plate when she thought no one was looking. Then there was old Pete, who washed dishes and told the same 3 jokes every day. But somehow they were still funny. Working at the diner meant being on your feet for 10 hours straight, carrying heavy trays, and dealing with difficult customers, who complained about everything from the temperature of their soup to the speed of service. Lisa's back ached at the end of every shift, and her feet felt like they were on fire. But she never complained because she knew how lucky she was to have a job at all. The hardest part wasn't the physical work, though. It was leaving her kids every morning and not getting home until after dark. Tommy and Amy stayed with Mrs. Rodriguez, next door, who was kind enough to watch them for $20 a week. Lisa felt guilty every single day for not being there when Tommy struggled with his homework, or when Amy had trouble breathing and got scared. Money was always tight. Lisa shopped at the discount grocery store, bought clothes at the thrift shop, and cut coupons from the newspaper every Sunday. She had learned to make a dollar stretch further than most people thought possible. Dinner was often rice and beans, or pasta with butter. Meat was a luxury they could only afford once or twice a week. The medical bills were the worst part. Amy's asthma medication cost over $100 a month, even with the basic insurance Lisa got through the diner. Tommy's reading specialist wanted to see him twice a week, but Lisa could only afford once a month. She lay awake at night wondering how she could possibly give her children everything they needed to succeed in life. But Lisa had learned something important over the past few years. Kindness didn't cost anything, and it often came back to you when you needed it most. She helped elderly customers to their cars, listened when someone needed to talk, and always treated everyone with respect, regardless of how much money they had or what they looked like. On this particular Tuesday evening, in August, the diner was quieter than usual. The heat outside was unbearable, and most people were staying home with their air conditioning. Lisa had only served a few customers all day, which meant her tip jar was practically empty. She was already worried about how she would pay for Amy's medicine that week. The bell above the door chimed, and Lisa looked up to see an elderly man walking in slowly. He was wearing old clothes that looked like they hadn't been washed in a while, and his shoes had holes in them. His gray hair was messy and he looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from carrying heavy burdens for too long. Lisa smiled and walked over to him. "Good evening, sir. You can sit anywhere you'd like." The man looked around nervously and chose a table in the corner, away from the windows. Lisa brought him a menu and a glass of water, noticing that his hands shook slightly as he reached for it. "Take your time looking at the menu," she said gently. "I'll be right here if you need anything." The man studied the menu for a long time, and Lisa could see him counting coins in his palm. Finally, he looked up at her with tired eyes. "Miss, I'm wondering if I could just get a cup of coffee, please." The small size. Lisa nodded and brought him the coffee. She watched as he wrapped his hands around the warm mug and took a small sip. He looked like he hadn't eaten in a while, and something about his situation reminded her of her own struggles. After a few minutes, the man called her over again. His voice was quiet and a little embarrassed. "Excuse me, miss, I hate to ask, but do you have any crackers or bread that I could have? I'm quite hungry, and I'm afraid this coffee is all I can afford right now." Lisa felt her heart break a little. She looked at this stranger and saw someone who was struggling just like she was, maybe even worse. Without thinking twice about it, she made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. "You know what?" she said with a warm smile. "I think we have some leftover soup from lunch that's just going to go to waste. Let me bring you a bowl." The man's eyes filled with tears. "Oh no, miss, I couldn't possibly. I don't have money for soup." "Don't worry about it," Lisa said. "It's going to be thrown away anyway. You'd actually be doing us a favor." She went to the kitchen and asked Maria to prepare a full meal. Soup, a sandwich, and some of the homemade pie that was left over from the day. Maria didn't ask any questions. She had worked with Lisa long enough to know that her heart was always in the right place. When Lisa brought the food to the table, the man couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Miss, this is too much. I can't accept all this." "Please," Lisa said, sitting down across from him. "Everyone deserves a good meal. What's your name?" "Frank," the man said quietly. "And thank you. You have no idea what this means to me." As Frank ate, he began to tell Lisa his story. He had lost his job 6 months ago when the factory where he worked for 20 years closed down. At his age, nobody wanted to hire him. He had been staying at the homeless shelter, but there wasn't always room, and sometimes he had to sleep outside. He was embarrassed and ashamed, but he didn't know what else to do. Lisa listened with compassion, sharing some of her own struggles as a single mother trying to make ends meet. She told Frank about Tommy and Amy, about the medical bills, and the worry that kept her up at night. Despite their different circumstances, they both understood what it meant to fight for survival every single day. When Frank finished eating, Lisa did something that would shock everyone who heard the story later. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a $20 bill, money from her tips that she desperately needed for her own family. "Please take this," she said, pressing the money into Frank's hand. "Use it for bus fare or whatever you need." Frank tried to refuse, but Lisa insisted. "We all need help sometimes," she said. "Maybe someday when things are better for you, you can help someone else." What Lisa didn't know was that someone had been watching this entire interaction from across the diner, someone who would soon turn her act of kindness into the biggest mistake of her life. After Frank finished his meal, Lisa could see that he looked much better. The color had returned to his face and his hands weren't shaking as much as when he first walked in. He had eaten every bite of the soup and sandwich, and even finished the slice of apple pie that Maria had added to the plate. "Miss, I can't thank you enough," Frank said, his voice stronger now. I haven't had a meal like that in weeks. Lisa sat across from him during her break, something she rarely did because the diner was usually too busy. But tonight was different. There were only 2 other customers, and they were almost finished with their dinner. She found herself genuinely interested in Frank's story and wanted to make sure he was okay. "Where are you staying tonight?" she asked gently. Frank looked down at his hands. "There's a shelter about 10 blocks from here, but they don't always have room. Sometimes I have to find other places to sleep." Lisa's heart ached thinking about this elderly man sleeping outside in the August heat. She remembered her own grandfather, who had been about Frank's age when he passed away. He had been a proud man who worked hard his whole life, just like Frank seemed to be. "The shelter serves breakfast in the morning," Frank continued, "but dinner is harder to find. A lot of places throw away food at the end of the day, but they won't give it to people like me." "That's terrible," Lisa said. "Nobody should have to go hungry." Frank smiled sadly. "You're very kind, miss. Most people look right through me like I'm invisible. But you treated me like I was somebody important." "You are somebody important," Lisa said firmly. "Everyone is important." They talked for another 20 minutes. Frank told her about his life before everything went wrong. He had worked at the same manufacturing plant for 23 years, making parts for cars. He was good at his job and took pride in his work. He had a small apartment that he kept clean and organized, and he sent money to his sister every month to help with her medical bills. But then the factory closed down. The company said they were moving production overseas where labor was cheaper. Frank, along with 300 other workers, lost their jobs overnight. At 68 years old, he discovered that nobody wanted to hire someone his age, no matter how experienced he was. "I applied everywhere," Frank said. "Grocery stores, restaurants, warehouses, even places that paid minimum wage. They all said they were looking for someone younger, someone who could work faster. His unemployment benefits ran out after 6 months. Frank used up his small savings to pay rent and buy food, but it wasn't enough. Eventually, he had to give up his apartment and move to the shelter. All his furniture and belongings had to be sold or thrown away. "The hardest part isn't being hungry or not having a place to sleep," Frank said quietly. "The hardest part is feeling like you don't matter anymore. Like society has decided you're worthless just because you're old." Lisa understood that feeling, more than Frank knew. She had often felt invisible herself, working long hours for little pay while struggling to take care of her children. The difference was that she still had hope for a better future. Frank seemed like he had given up on hope completely. "You matter," Lisa told him. "And things can get better. You just have to keep trying." Frank looked at her with grateful eyes. "You're an angel, miss, I mean that." Lisa blushed. She didn't feel like an angel. She felt like a woman who was barely keeping her head above water most days. But if helping Frank made her feel like she was doing something right in the world, then maybe that was enough. As they continued talking, Lisa noticed a figure moving near the kitchen. Derek Collins, the assistant manager, was supposed to be in the back office doing paperwork, but he seemed to be watching them instead. Derek was 26 years old and had been working at the diner for about 8 months. Tony had promoted him to assistant manager after the previous person quit, even though several of the other employees thought Derek wasn't ready for the responsibility. Derek was the kind of person who always seemed to be looking for ways to make himself look better, by making others look worse. He complained about other employees to Tony, criticized the way people did their jobs, and acted like he was more important than everyone else. Lisa had never liked him, but she tried to stay out of his way and focus on her own work. She didn't notice Derek watching them, but she probably wouldn't have cared anyway. What she was doing wasn't wrong. She was helping someone who needed help, using food that would have been thrown away and money that belonged to her. Frank finished the last sip of his coffee and sighed contentedly. "I should probably get going," he said. "The shelter fills up fast, and I want to make sure I have a place to sleep tonight." "Wait," Lisa said, reaching into her apron pocket. She pulled out the $20 bill she had mentioned earlier, money from her tips that she had been planning to use for Amy's medicine. "Please take this." Frank's eyes widened. "Oh no, miss, I couldn't take your money. You've already done too much." "It's not much, but it might help you get bus fare or whatever you need," Lisa insisted, pressing the bill into his hand. "Everyone needs help sometimes." "But you need this money too," Frank said. "I can tell you're working hard to take care of your family." "We'll be okay," Lisa said, even though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. "Just promise me you'll use it for something that helps you." Frank's eyes filled with tears again. He carefully folded the $20 bill and put it in his shirt pocket. "I promise, and I'll never forget what you did for me tonight." He stood up slowly, his joints creaking from sitting in one position for too long. Lisa walked him to the door and watched as he disappeared into the darkness outside. She said a little prayer that he would make it safely to the shelter, and that tomorrow would be a better day for him. When Lisa turned around, Derek was standing right behind her with his arms crossed and an angry expression on his face. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded. "I was helping a customer," Lisa said, confused by his tone. "Helping yourself to free food and giving away the restaurant's money, you mean?" Lisa felt her stomach drop. "Derek, that food was going to be thrown away anyway, and I gave him my own tip money, not money from the restaurant. You gave away food without permission, and you were sitting around talking instead of working. That's theft and laziness. There are only 2 other customers in the whole place, and they don't need anything right now," Lisa said, trying to stay calm. "I was on my break. Your break was 15 minutes ago. And it doesn't matter if the food was going to be thrown away. You don't have the authority to decide who gets free meals." Lisa couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had worked at the diner for 3 years without any problems. She was always on time, always polite to customers, and never caused any trouble. Now Derek was acting like she had committed a serious crime. "Derek, I was just helping someone who was hungry. Isn't that what we're supposed to do as human beings?" "What we're supposed to do is follow the rules and protect the restaurant's profits," Derek said loudly. "You stole food and gave away money. That's grounds for immediate termination." "Termination?" Lisa's voice cracked. "You're going to fire me for helping a hungry person? I'm going to fire you for theft and violation of company policy." The 2 other customers had stopped eating and were staring at them. Maria had come out of the kitchen to see what was happening. Even old Pete had poked his head out from the dishwashing area. "Please, Derek," Lisa said, her voice shaking. "I have 2 kids at home. I need this job. I wasn't trying to steal anything." "You should have thought about your kids before you decided to give away food and money," Derek said coldly. "Clean out your locker and get out. If you're not gone in 10 minutes, I'm calling the police." "The police?" Lisa couldn't believe this was happening. "For giving someone a bowl of soup?" "For theft," Derek repeated. "Maria, you're my witness." Lisa gave away food without permission and admitted to giving the customer money. Maria looked uncomfortable. She had seen what Lisa did, but she also knew that Lisa was a good person who would never steal anything. "Derek, maybe you should talk to Tony before you—" "Tony left me in charge tonight," Derek interrupted. "This is my decision." Lisa felt like the world was spinning around her. 3 years of hard work, 3 years of never missing a shift or causing problems, and now she was being fired for showing kindness to someone who needed help. "Can I at least call Tony and explain what happened?" she asked desperately. "Tony will hear my version when he comes in tomorrow morning," Derek said. "Now get your things and leave, or I'm calling the police." Lisa walked slowly to the employee break room, her legs feeling like they might give out at any moment. She opened her locker and took out her spare uniform, her comfortable shoes, and the small mirror she kept on the top shelf. 3 years of her life fit into a small paper bag. When she came back out, Derek was standing by the door like a security guard. The other customers had left money on their table and hurried out, clearly uncomfortable with what they had witnessed. "I hope you're happy," Lisa said quietly as she walked past Derek. "I'm protecting this business," Derek replied. "Maybe next time you'll think twice before you steal." Lisa stopped and looked at him. "I didn't steal anything. I helped another human being. If you can't understand the difference, then I feel sorry for you." She walked out into the hot August night, carrying her bag of belongings and wondering how she was going to tell Tommy and Amy that Mommy had lost her job. The 20 Dollars she had given to Frank would have bought Amy's medicine. Now she had no job, no money, and no idea what she was going to do. As she walked home through the empty streets, Lisa couldn't stop thinking about Frank. She hoped he had made it safely to the shelter. She hoped the $20 would help him get back on his feet somehow. Even though helping him had cost her everything, she knew she would do it again if she had the chance. What Lisa didn't know was that her act of kindness was about to change her life in ways she never could have imagined. Lisa woke up on Thursday morning feeling like she was living in a nightmare that wouldn't end. It had been 2 days since Derek fired her from Tony's diner, and she still couldn't believe what had happened. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Tommy and Amy getting ready for school in the next room. How was she going to tell them that Mommy lost her job for helping someone who was hungry? The rent was due in 5 days. She had exactly $43 in her checking account, and maybe $15 in change scattered around the apartment. Amy needed her breathing medicine refilled, and Tommy's school had sent home a list of supplies he needed for the new semester. Lisa felt like she was drowning and there was no one to throw her a rope. She had spent all day Wednesday walking from restaurant to restaurant, store to store, filling out job applications. Most places wanted to know why she left her last job, and when she tried to explain what happened, she could see the doubt in their eyes. Who gets fired for giving food to a hungry person? It sounded like she was making up excuses. The phone in the kitchen was an old model with a long curly cord that Lisa had bought at a yard sale years ago. It barely worked most of the time, and she had been thinking about getting it fixed when she had extra money. Now she was grateful it worked all because it was her only connection to potential employers. Around 10 in the morning, the phone rang. Lisa almost didn't answer it because she thought it might be the landlord calling about the rent, or maybe the electric company with another bill. But something made her pick it up on the 4th ring. "Hello?" she said quietly. "Good morning. Is this Lisa Henderson?" The voice on the other end was deep and professional, the kind of voice you heard on business commercials. "Yes, this is Lisa. Who is this, please?" "My name is James Patterson. I'm the CEO of Patterson Restaurant Group. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" Lisa almost hung up the phone. She thought it was some kind of joke or maybe a scam. Why would a CEO be calling her? She had never even heard of Patterson Restaurant Group. "I'm sorry, but I think you have the wrong number," she said. "No, Lisa. I have the right number. I was at Tony's diner on Tuesday night. You might remember me as Frank." Lisa's heart stopped. Frank? The elderly man she had helped? The one she gave food and money to? This made no sense at all. "I don't understand," she whispered. "I know this is confusing, and I know it's hard to believe, but I need you to listen to me very carefully. My name is James Patterson, and I own over 200 restaurants across the country. Tuesday night, I was at Tony's diner conducting what we call undercover research." Lisa sat down heavily in the kitchen chair. Her hands were shaking, and she felt like the room was spinning around her. "You were pretending to be homeless?" she asked. "I was dressed as someone who was struggling, yes. I do this regularly to see how my potential business partners treat people when they think no one important is watching." "Lisa, what you did for, me that night was the most genuine act of kindness I have witnessed in 20 years of business." Lisa couldn't speak. She kept thinking this had to be some kind of cruel joke. People didn't just call you up and tell you they were secretly rich after you helped them. "I know this is shocking," James continued. "I've spent the last 2 days learning everything I can about you. I've talked to customers at the diner. I've spoken with your neighbors. I've even talked to your children's teachers." "You talked to my kids' teachers?" Lisa was suddenly worried. "Why would you do that?" "Because I needed to know what kind of person you really are." And Lisa, everyone, and I mean everyone, told me the same thing. They said you're the most caring, hardworking, generous person they've ever met. Mrs. Peterson told me how you sit with her every Tuesday and listen to her stories. Mr. Williams said you remember exactly how he likes his breakfast every single morning. Your neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, said you help her carry groceries up the stairs even when you're exhausted from work. Lisa started crying. She couldn't help it. After feeling so hopeless for the past 2 days, hearing that people actually noticed Her kindness was overwhelming. Your children's teacher, Mrs. Thompson, told me that you volunteer at school events even though you work double shifts. She said Tommy and Amy are two of the most polite, well-behaved children in her class, and that's a reflection of how you're raising them. I just try to do my best, Lisa said through her tears. That's exactly my point. You give everything you have even when you don't have much to give. Do you know what you did when you helped me on Tuesday night? I just gave you some food and a few dollars. Lisa, you gave me your own dinner. Maria told me that sandwich was your meal for the night, and that $20 you gave me. That was money you needed for your daughter's medicine, wasn't it? Lisa didn't answer, but James already knew the truth. You sacrificed your own needs to help a complete stranger. You treated me with dignity and respect when I was dressed like someone society often ignores. You sat with me and listened to my story like I was the most important person in the world. Anyone would have done the same thing, Lisa said. No, Lisa. That's where you're wrong. I've been to hundreds of restaurants in situations just like that one. Most people look the other way. Some are polite but distant. A few might offer a free cup of coffee. But you saw a human being who needed help, and you helped without thinking about what it might cost you. James paused for a moment, and Lisa could hear papers rustling in the background. I've also done some research into Derek Collins, the assistant manager who fired you. Lisa's stomach dropped. She didn't want to think about Derek or what had happened. Lisa, Derek has been stealing from Tony's diner for months. He's been pocketing cash payments and lying about inventory. I have all the evidence right here. What? Lisa couldn't believe what she was hearing. Derek saw you helping me and thought he could use it to make himself look good to Tony. He wanted to show that he was a strong manager who wouldn't tolerate rule-breaking. But the truth is, Derek has been breaking rules and stealing money while you've been working honestly for 3 years. Lisa felt angry and relieved at the same time. She had been fired for helping someone, while Derek had been stealing and got away with it. I've already spoken with Tony this morning, James continued. Derek has been terminated and Tony wants you to come back to work immediately. But Lisa, I have a different offer for you. What kind of offer? I want you to come work for Patterson Restaurant Group. I'm offering you a position as Regional Customer Service Manager. You would oversee customer experience at 15 of our locations across the state. Lisa almost dropped the phone. I don't understand. I'm just a waitress. You're not just anything, Lisa. You're exactly the kind of person I want representing my company. Someone who understands that every customer is important. Someone who treats people with kindness regardless of who they are or what they look like. But I don't have experience managing anything. Experience can be taught. Character cannot. I've seen your character, and it's exactly what my company needs. James told her about the salary, more money than she had ever imagined making. He talked about health insurance that would cover all of Amy's medical needs. He mentioned a company car and help with Tommy's special education services. I need some time to think about this, Lisa said, even though her heart was already saying yes. Of course. But there's something else I need to tell you. I'm buying Tony's diner. You're what? Tony has been struggling to keep the place open. I'm purchasing the diner, but I'm keeping Tony as the manager and investing money to fix it up. The diner has been part of this community for 40 years and it deserves to stay open. Lisa was crying again, but this time they were tears of joy and disbelief. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about my offer. I'm going to be in town tomorrow morning. Can we meet at the diner at 10 o'clock? I'd like to talk to you in person. After Lisa hung up the phone, she sat in her kitchen for a long time, trying to process everything that had just happened. Was this really happening? Was the man she had helped really a millionaire CEO who wanted to give her a new life? She thought about Tuesday night and how natural it had felt to help Frank. She hadn't done it because she expected anything in return. She had done it because it was the right thing to do. And now, somehow, that simple act of kindness was about to change everything. Lisa looked around her small apartment, at the stack of bills on the counter, at the picture of Tommy and Amy on the refrigerator, at the calendar where she had circled the rent due date in red marker. Maybe, just maybe, tomorrow would be the beginning of something wonderful. Lisa barely slept that night. She kept replaying the phone call in her mind, wondering if it had really happened or if she was dreaming. At 3 in the morning, she got up and checked her phone to see if James Patterson had really called her. The number was still there in her call history, proving it wasn't just her imagination. Friday morning came slowly. Lisa made breakfast for Tommy and Amy, trying to act normal even though her heart was beating fast with excitement and fear. She had decided not to tell the children anything until she knew for sure what was happening. They had been through enough disappointment lately. "Mommy, are you okay?" Amy asked, looking up from her cereal bowl with concerned eyes. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Mommy just has an important meeting today." Tommy looked at her suspiciously. At 8 years old, he was smart enough to know when adults were keeping secrets. "Is it about getting your job back at the diner?" "Maybe," Lisa said, giving him a hug. "But don't worry about grown-up stuff. Just focus on having a good day at school." After dropping the kids off at Mrs. Rodriguez's house, Lisa walked slowly toward Tony's diner. It felt strange going back to the place where everything had gone wrong just 3 days ago. She wondered if Derek would be there, if he would cause more trouble for her. As she got closer to the diner, she saw several fancy cars parked outside. One was a black luxury sedan that looked like it cost more than Lisa made in 5 years. Her stomach felt nervous as she realized this was really happening. The bell chimed as she opened the door, and Lisa was surprised to see the diner full of people in business suits. Tony was behind the counter looking confused but excited. Maria was in the kitchen cooking more food than Lisa had seen her make in months. "Lisa," Tony called out when he saw her. "Thank goodness you're here. I don't understand half of what's happening, but these people say they're going to save the diner." A tall man in an expensive suit approached her. He looked nothing like the tired, shabby Frank she had met on Tuesday night. His hair was neatly combed, his clothes were perfectly pressed, and he had the confident smile of someone who was used to being in charge. "Lisa, I'm James Patterson. We spoke on the phone yesterday." Lisa stared at him, still having trouble believing this was the same person she had given her sandwich to. "You look so different," she said quietly. James smiled. "That was the point. May we sit down and talk?" They sat in the same corner booth where Frank had eaten his meal 3 days ago. James had a folder full of papers, and Lisa could see her name on some of them. "First, I want to show you something," James said, pulling out a tablet computer. On the screen was a video from the diner's security camera, showing Lisa bringing food to Frank and sitting with him. "Tony gave me permission to look at this footage. I wanted you to see what I saw." Lisa watched herself on the screen, remembering how sad Frank had looked and how natural it felt to help him. In the video, she could see herself giving him the $20 bill and refusing to take it back. "Do you see what I see when I watch this?" James asked. "I see someone doing what anyone should do. Lisa, I've shown this video to my entire board of directors. 12 successful business people who have seen everything. Every single one of them was moved to tears watching you help a stranger without expecting anything in return." James pulled out another paper. "This is Derek's employment file. In the past 6 months, he received 3 complaints from customers about rude service. He was caught twice giving smaller portions to elderly customers to save money. And yesterday, when I had my accountants look at the books, we found that he had been stealing cash payments and lying about inventory for over 4 months. Lisa felt angry thinking about how Derek had treated her while he was the one actually stealing. Tony never knew because Derek was smart about covering his tracks. But my team found over $3,000 missing from the register, all connected to Derek's shifts. $3,000? Lisa couldn't believe it. Derek saw you helping me and thought he could make himself look good by firing you for giving away food. He wanted to show Tony that he was a strong manager, but the truth is, you were the most honest employee Tony had, while Derek was robbing him blind. James opened another folder. "Now let me tell you about my offer. Patterson Restaurant Group operates 247 restaurants in 12 states. We're always looking for people who understand what real customer service means." He handed Lisa a paper with numbers on it that made her eyes go wide. "This is your starting salary as Regional Customer Service Manager. $75,000 per year, plus health insurance for you and your children, plus a company car, plus bonuses based on customer satisfaction scores." Lisa stared at the numbers. She had never seen so much money in her life. I would be in charge of customer service. You would visit our restaurants, train staff on how to treat customers, and make sure every person who walks into our places feels valued and respected, just like you made me feel on Tuesday night. But I don't have any training for that kind of work. Lisa, you have something more valuable than training. You have a natural understanding of what people need. You can't teach someone to care about others the way you do. James pulled out more papers. We would also pay for you to take business classes if you want them. And there's something else. He showed her plans for renovating Tony's diner. New equipment, fresh paint, comfortable seating, modern air conditioning. I'm investing $500,000 into this place. Tony will stay as the manager, but it will become the flagship location for our new community care program. What's that? It's based on what you did for me. Every month, our restaurants will identify someone in the community who needs help, and we'll provide free meals, job training, or other support. We're calling it the Lisa Henderson Community Care Program. Lisa started crying. She couldn't help it. 3 days ago, she was fired and facing eviction. Now this man was naming a program after her and offering her more money than she had ever dreamed of making. I don't deserve all this, she said through her tears. Lisa, you deserve more than this. Do you know what happened after I posted about your story on social media yesterday? She shook her head. It's been shared over 100,000 times. People are calling you a hero. 3 news stations want to interview you. And because of all the positive attention, Patterson Restaurant Group's stock price went up 15%. James smiled. Your kindness didn't just change my life and your life. It's inspiring thousands of people and making our company more successful. Tony came over to their table, looking excited and confused at the same time. Lisa, this man is going to fix everything that's broken in my diner. New stoves, new freezer, even new floors. And he wants to keep all the same recipes and the same home-style feeling. The diner has been part of this community for 40 years, James said. We're not changing what makes it special. We're just making it better. Over the next hour, James explained more details about the job offer. Lisa would start with 2 weeks of training at the company headquarters. She would get an apartment allowance to help her move to a better neighborhood. Tommy would get the reading help he needed, and Amy's medical expenses would be completely covered by the company insurance. I have one question, Lisa said. Why me? You could hire someone with experience, someone with a college degree. Because experience and degrees don't teach you to give your own dinner to a hungry stranger. They don't teach you to sacrifice your tip money to help someone you'll probably never see again. Those things come from the heart and you can't learn them in school. James stood up and extended his hand. So what do you say? Will you come work for Patterson Restaurant Group? Lisa looked around the diner that had been her second home for 3 years. She thought about Tommy and Amy, about all the nights she had worried about paying bills and providing for them. She thought about Derek and how unfair it was that good people got punished while dishonest people got ahead. But mostly, she thought about Tuesday night and how right it had felt to help Frank. She hadn't done it for a reward. She had done it because helping others was who she was. Yes, she said, shaking his hand. I accept your offer. The people in business suits started clapping, and Tony was grinning from ear to ear. Maria came out of the kitchen with tears in her eyes and gave Lisa a huge hug. I always knew you were special, Maria whispered in her ear. 6 months later, Lisa was living in a beautiful 3-bedroom house with a yard where Tommy and Amy could play. Tommy was getting the reading help he needed and was already improving in school. Amy's breathing problems were under control with the new medicine that the company insurance covered completely. Lisa had visited 37 restaurants in her new job, training hundreds of employees about treating customers with kindness and respect. Every restaurant she visited saw improvements in customer satisfaction and sales. The Lisa Henderson Community Care Program had helped over 200 families across 12 states. People who were struggling with medical bills, job loss, or homelessness were getting the help they needed, all because one waitress decided to help a hungry stranger. Derek Collins had been arrested for theft and was facing criminal charges. The $3,000 he stole was returned to Tony, who used it to give bonuses to his hardworking staff. But the most amazing thing happened. when Lisa appeared on a national morning television show to tell her story. Thousands of viewers were inspired to perform their own acts of kindness. Restaurants across the country started programs to help people in need. Schools began teaching children about the importance of helping others. Lisa's simple act of giving food to a hungry person had created a wave of kindness that spread far beyond anything she could have imagined, and it all started because she chose to see another person's need and respond with compassion, even when she had very little to give. The story proves something important. In a world that often rewards selfishness and cruelty, genuine kindness is not only noticed but can change everything. Sometimes the smallest acts of love create the biggest miracles.